Nobody thinks the clock is ticking, until the silence becomes louder than the attention that once filled their world. There's a strange illusion that thrives in modern culture, especially for young women. An illusion so seductive, so comforting, that it feels less like a belief and more like gravity. There will always be time. In your early 20s, time feels infinite. Options feel infinite. Life feels infinite. And for many women today, attention arrives like oxygen. A buzzing phone. A stream of compliments. A crowd of men hoping to be chosen. Validation becomes the background noise of everyday life, so constant that it becomes invisible. But psychology has a word for why this feels addictive. Intermittent reinforcement. Not every message is amazing. Not every match is meaningful. But enough attention arrives in unpredictable bursts that it creates the same loop casinos rely on. Maybe the next pull of the lever will bring the jackpot. And so life becomes a cycle of swipes, texts, nights out, red hearts, DMs, and tiny dopamine hits. It feels good. It feels effortless. It feels endless. Until one day, it stops feeling endless. But that part comes later. Picture her. 25 years old. Her life moves in orbit around her reflection, not out of narcissism, but out of habit. Her friends tell her she's the prize. Her feed tells her she has endless options. The world, for a time, agrees. She believes time is a river flowing in one direction, toward more attention, more choices, more men waiting for their chance. But every river hits the ocean eventually. And the truth is brutal. Later only works until life demands now. The story she's been living, the one handed to her by culture, media, and the dating economy, hides a simple psychological trap. When you mistake attention for abundance, you forget that both can run out. This isn't about biology. This isn't about blaming women. This is about a human flaw. We all overestimate the future when the present feels full. Validation becomes the drug, and time becomes the dealer. But neither lasts forever. Rule card. Attention is a currency with an expiration date. Spend it wisely. Because when the noise fades, when the DMs slow down, when the world stops clapping just for existing, she won't blame time. She'll look for someone else to blame. And that's where the next chapter begins. The moment the mirror stops cooperating. The wall isn't a moment in time. It's the moment the world stops echoing the story you believed about yourself. There comes a quiet shift, subtle at first. Messages that once flooded her notifications now drip instead of pour. The matches that once appeared instantly now take hours, then days. Men who once pursued her intensely now look past her as if searching for someone else in a crowded room. She feels it before she understands it. Not aging. Not loss of beauty. Loss of confirmation. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. The human brain normalizes anything it receives consistently, even praise, attention, or desires from others. What once felt extraordinary becomes baseline. Expected. Deserved. So when the baseline shifts, even slightly, it doesn't register as change. It registers as injustice. Her internal dialogue begins its slow unraveling. Men have changed. Men don't commit anymore. Men are intimidated by strong women. Men only want bimbos now. Anything, except the truth. The world is no longer mirroring the fantasy she lived inside for nearly a decade. Imagine her at 33. Same woman, different reality. She goes out with friends. 10 years ago, every room bent toward her, eyes following her like she was the gravitational center of the night. Tonight, the room barely notices. Not because she's unattractive. Not because she has no value. But because a new generation of 22-year-olds has entered the same arena, and the market simply recalibrates without asking her permission. This is the psychological collision known as the wall. Not a biological expiration date. A psychological one. The moment she realizes, the world no longer treats me the way it used to. Her reflection becomes a battleground. She studies her face not for flaws, but for clues. What changed? Why is the world different? And when fear whispers answers she doesn't want to hear, she searches for a villain. Humans do this when reality contradicts identity. It's easier to point outward than inward. She starts blaming the mirror, then men, then society, because the alternative is terrifying. What if her entire sense of romantic power was built on something temporary? She takes a step back from the mirror, breath shaky, not angry yet, but deeply unsettled. Something inside her knows the story is shifting. And that feeling, the discomfort she can't shake, becomes the seed of the next transformation. If the mirror won't confirm her worth anymore, she'll demand someone else to. In the next chapter, we confront the hidden machinery behind blame, and why the ego would rather burn the world than admit a painful truth. When the world stops validating us, the ego doesn't apologize. It goes hunting for someone to blame. Humans don't collapse when reality changes. They collapse when identity is threatened. And for many modern women who grew up wrapped in a decade of attention, admiration, and romantic abundance, that identity was built on an unspoken belief. If men desired me once, they always will. So when the attention fades, when messages slow, invitations drop, and men grow cautious instead of captivated, the ego feels cornered, shaken, wounded. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. The brain's instinct to protect itself from truths that contradict its self-image. Instead of asking, have my expectations changed? Did I ignore long-term compatibility? Did I confuse attention with commitment? The ego crafts a shield. Men are the problem. And the narratives begin. You've heard them. Maybe you've lived with someone who believed them. Men are intimidated by successful women. Men don't want commitment anymore. Men only chase younger girls because they're insecure. Men today are weak, selfish, and low value. These statements feel empowering, but they're actually anesthetics, numbing agents designed to avoid deeper pain. Let's look at a woman named Marissa. In her 20s, she dated only the top-tier men. The charming ones, the wealthy ones, the ones every other woman wanted. Her standards rose with her perceived value, and every year she raised the bar a little more. But while her tastes evolved, her self-awareness didn't. She never asked what she was offering beyond beauty and energy. She never worked on emotional maturity or relational humility. She wasn't a bad person, she simply never had to be more than the girl everyone wants. But now, at 34, she finds those same men dating 24-year-olds. And the rage begins. It's disgusting. They are predators. They can't handle a real woman. They're afraid of my success. But the deeper truth is simpler. Men didn't change. Her leverage did. And her ego can't accept the drop without assigning blame. Blame becomes its own addiction. It gives her an enemy. It gives her a story. It protects her from the grief she refuses to name. Grief for wasted years. For broken situationships. For believing that youth was a permanent advantage. For mistaking abundance for security. It's easier to wage war against a gender than to confront regret. But here's the twist. And it's the part most people never consider. Men are living inside their own illusions too. And their fantasies collide with women's illusions in ways that leave both sides furious and lonely. Because this isn't a gender war. It's a mirror war. And in the next chapter, we flip that mirror toward the men. To expose the fantasy they cling to just as tightly. Before you think this story is one-sided, look again. Men have been living inside their own fantasy, just a different shape, but equally blinding. It's easy to look at the modern dating landscape and imagine women holding all the illusions. But men have been quietly constructing their own dream world too. A world where effort is optional. Where emotional growth is unnecessary. Where maturity can be delayed without consequence. A world fueled by porn, social media, hyper-idealized beauty standards, and manosphere echo chambers whispering the same message. If you grind hard enough, you'll get a 22-year-old model at 35. This is the masculine version of the same lie women hear. Your value will never decline. Different script. Same delusion. Picture him, Daniel. A man who coasted through his 20s. No urgency. No discipline. No emotional development. He believed life would reward him later simply for existing today. He consumed content telling him the dating market is simple. Become high value. Make money. Lift weights. Then choose any woman you want. But notice what's missing. Character. Communication. Self-awareness. Relational competence. He spent years fantasizing about a future partner without doing any internal work that would make him worthy of that partner. And now, at 35, he's shocked to discover something brutal. Women, even younger ones, want more than a wallet and confidence. They want emotional safety. They want maturity. They want secure attachment. Daniels's fantasy crumbles. He blames women. He blames society. He blames feminism. Anything but the truth. You cannot attract what you haven't prepared yourself to sustain. This is where male and female illusions collide. Women believe their attractiveness can remain frozen in time. Men believe their desirability automatically skyrockets with age. Women ignore emotional accountability because attention once came effortlessly. Men ignore emotional accountability because they think money will compensate for everything else. Two illusions. Opposite directions. Same psychological root. Avoidance of responsibility. Under all the anger, all the blame, all the gender war commentary, there's something more fragile. Fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of aging. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of not being enough. You can almost hear it beneath the noise. If I'm not special, will anyone ever truly love me? That fear sits in both hearts, male and female, waiting to be faced. But most people don't face it. They fire shots at each other instead. Which brings us to the final turning point. If both sides are lost in fantasies, who steps forward to break the cycle? Who grows up first? Who chooses responsibility over resentment? In the next chapter, we arrive at the real wall. The one nobody sees coming. And the only one that actually matters. The real wall isn't about age. It's the moment life asks a question you can no longer outrun. Will you take responsibility, or keep searching for someone to blame? Most people think the wall is physical. A number. A birthday. A wrinkle. A fading spotlight. But they're wrong. The real wall is psychological, a spiritual checkpoint where your narrative, your ego, and your identity collide with the reality you've been avoiding. And it forces a choice. Some people choose bitterness. Others choose truth. One path destroys them. The other sets them free. To understand the difference, look at Elena. At 35, she finally hit a breaking point. The attention that once drowned her now arrived in drops. The men she wanted no longer flocked to her profile. And the resentment she carried was turning into something darker, a quiet, constant exhaustion. She blamed men for years. She blamed their preferences, their immaturity, their commitment issues. But something shifted the day she sat alone in her apartment, holding her phone, rereading an old conversation with a man she once ghosted, the one who treated her the best. She felt something she hadn't felt before. Not anger. Not superiority. Not entitlement. Grief. Grief for the moments she wasted. Grief for chasing attention instead of connection. Grief for confusing excitement with compatibility. Grief for thinking she would always have time. It wasn't self-hate. It was self-awareness. And for the first time, she whispered the sentence that breaks the spell of delusion. I played a role in where I ended up. That moment, that single thread of honesty, became the doorway to transformation. Elena stopped asking, "Why don't men want me?" and started asking, "What am I offering that would make a good man stay?" She began working on communication, emotional stability, humility, realistic expectations, and genuine partnership skills. She didn't try to become 25 again. She became wiser than she had ever been. And ironically, that's when everything changed. Men responded to her differently. Not because her age reversed, but because her energy did. Humility replaced entitlement. Warmth replaced defensiveness. Clarity replaced chaos. She wasn't chasing validation anymore. She was offering connection. And it made her magnetic in a new way, not youthful, but grounded. Here's the truth nobody likes to say. Nobody owes you desire. Nobody owes you attention. Nobody owes you the relationship you wish you had. But you owe yourself honesty. You owe yourself growth. You owe yourself a future built on awareness, not fantasy rule card. You cannot rewrite the past, but you can outgrow the person who made those choices. So here we stand at the end of the journey. Women hit their mirror. Men hit their ego. Both hit the wall. But only the ones who choose accountability walk through it. The rest stay stuck in a blame loop, yelling at ghosts. And now the final question remains. The only question that truly matters. What will you choose? The loudest moment in a person's life isn't when the world rejects them. It's when the world goes quiet, and they finally hear themselves. There comes a stage after blame, after grief, after illusions collapse. A stage most people never reach because it requires something far rarer than beauty, status, money, or validation. Emotional courage. This is the turning point. The moment where both men and women face the same truth. Who am I when nobody is clapping? Without DMs, without hype, without fantasies, without ego armor. What remains? For many, this silence feels like death. But for the few who endure it, it becomes rebirth. Look at two people standing on opposite sides of the same void. A woman who once relied on her beauty for connection. A man who once relied on his future success for worthiness. Both are stripped of their illusions now. Both are staring at the same uncomfortable question. If life never gave me the relationship I imagined, would I still know how to love? This is where real growth begins, not in the dating arena, not in the gender wars, not in comparisons or competition, but in solitude. Psychologists call this stage identity reconstruction, and it is brutal. No shortcuts. No external validation. No dopamine loops to soothe the uneasiness. Just you, and the truth you've avoided. Let's revisit Elena. Her transformation didn't end when she admitted her role in her past mistakes. It truly began when she stopped searching for men altogether. For 6 months she deleted her apps, stepped out of the market, and forced herself to confront the parts of her identity she had ignored. Her fear of abandonment. Her addiction to attention. Her unrealistic fantasies. Her lack of emotional regulation. Her belief that love was something that happened to her, not something she had to cultivate. And slowly, painfully, something shifted. She became steadier, clearer, more intentional, more peaceful. She no longer viewed men as judges evaluating her worth, but as humans with their own wounds, fears, and narratives. And with that shift, something extraordinary happened. She finally stopped blaming men, because she stopped seeing them as the enemy. Now look at Daniel. His turning point wasn't when women rejected him. It was when he finally admitted that the fantasy he clung to was a distraction, a way to avoid the work he needed to do on himself. He sat with uncomfortable questions. Why do I seek women who validate my ego but not my heart? Why do I fear vulnerability more than loneliness? Why do I expect loyalty when I haven't committed to my own growth? And the moment he faced those truths, his path changed. He didn't become more desirable because he made more money. He became more desirable because he became emotionally safe. Both Elena and Daniel discovered the same revelation. Attraction comes from energy. Connection comes from maturity. Longevity comes from character. The wall is real. But it is also a doorway. A doorway into a life built not on illusion, but on alignment. Rule card. Your future partner doesn't need perfection. They need the healed, honest version of you. And maybe that is the final truth. The wall doesn't destroy you. It destroys the version of you that was never meant to survive adulthood. In the silence after the fall, a stronger, wiser self begins to take shape. Someone capable of loving and being loved without fear. Someone ready for real connection. Someone who no longer blames. Because they finally understand.